Picture a small crack in a foundation. No one sees it, no one feels it yet. The house still stands, still looks fine from the street. That's how Scripture describes the way an enemy gets in, not with a broken door, with a crack nobody bothered to check. Ephesians 4:27 doesn't say if the devil attacks you, it says do not give the devil a foothold. A foothold, not permission to own you, but an opportunity you can choose to leave open. 5 signs today, quiet ones, the kind that look like nothing until you actually name them. One thing first, and I mean this seriously, this video is not about depression, not anxiety, not OCD, not intrusive thoughts, not a mental health struggle you're already carrying. Those are medical and psychological realities, and if that's you, please talk to a doctor or a counselor. That is wisdom, not a lack of faith. What we're naming here is something else entirely, quiet, willing patterns that open a door. Let's walk through them. 1. Sin you've stopped confessing because you've gotten used to it. Not sin you're fighting, sin you've made peace with, the habit you don't even flinch at anymore. That's the exact context of Ephesians 4:26-27. Paul is talking about unresolved anger. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and then immediately, do not give the devil a foothold. The order matters. Unaddressed sin isn't neutral. Scripture treats it as an opportunity the enemy can exploit. Ask yourself honestly, what have you stopped even praying about simply because you stopped expecting anything to change? That resignation itself is worth noticing. A believer who stopped bringing something to God hasn't necessarily stopped believing in Him. They've just quietly decided that particular area is closed for negotiation. That's exactly the kind of ground Scripture warns you not to hand over without a fight. 2. Isolating yourself from other believers. Not a quiet season, not an introvert recharging. A pattern, skipping church, avoiding your small group, going months without one honest conversation about your faith. 1 Peter 5:8 pictures the enemy as a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Peter's image is deliberate, a predator moving around, watching for whoever is vulnerable. That's not a throwaway detail. Isolation isn't just sad. It's strategic, and it's usually not an accident. If you've quietly drifted from every person who could ask you a hard question, that drifting was not neutral either. Look at Elijah in 1 Kings 19. Right after his greatest spiritual victory, he runs alone into the wilderness and sits under a broom tree begging God to let him die. Notice what God does first. Not a lecture, not a rebuke. He sends food, sleep, and eventually another person to walk with. Even a prophet who had just called down fire from heaven wasn't built to survive alone in the wilderness. Neither are you. If you're realizing right now how long it's actually been, stay with me because one of the later points connects directly to this one. And if this is landing, go ahead and subscribe now so you don't lose the thread. 3. Bitterness you've decided to just live with. Not grief, not a wound that's still healing, a grudge you've stopped even trying to release, one you've started defending as justified. Paul makes this explicit in 2 Corinthians 2:10-11. He forgives freely so that, in his words, we would not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. Read that again. Unforgiveness isn't just a wound. Paul calls it a scheme, and he names the one running it. Every year you keep that account open, you may think you're protecting yourself, but Paul warns that unforgiveness can become an opportunity for the enemy to exploit. Genesis 4 shows how far that road can lead. God warns Cain directly, sin is crouching at your door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Cain didn't wake up a murderer. He nursed one resentment, one unaddressed insult, until it ruled him instead of the other way around. 4. Prayer and scripture have quietly become optional. Not forgotten completely, just optional. Something you'll get to if the day allows it. James 4:7 gives the sequence on purpose. Submit to God first, and then resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Reverse that order. Try to resist without first submitting, and you're fighting with your hands empty. A believer who stopped opening the Word and stopped kneeling in prayer hasn't lost their faith. They've just stopped feeding it, and starved ground doesn't stay empty for long. Daniel 6 shows the opposite pattern. Even with a death penalty hanging over him for it, Daniel kept praying 3 times a day, exactly as he always had. He didn't start that habit in the crisis. The crisis just revealed a habit that was already there, built long before he needed it. Whatever rhythm you have right now with God is exactly what will still be standing when the pressure actually comes. 5. You've made peace with what God calls darkness as long as it's entertaining. Not one slip, a category you no longer question, the shows, the humor, the content you'd never repeat out loud to your pastor, but you'll sit through it happily every night. Ephesians 5:11 doesn't say avoid evil quietly. It says take no part in the fruitless deeds of darkness and expose them. Not everything you allow into your eyes and ears is neutral just because it's popular. What you feed your mind every night is either strengthening the wall or quietly taking bricks out of it. 2 Peter 2:7-8 describes Lot as righteous, yet tormented day after day by the lawless deeds he kept living among in Sodom. Notice, he didn't approve of it, he just stayed close enough to it, long enough that it stopped shocking him. That's the real danger of normalized darkness. It rarely asks for your approval, it only asks for your proximity. Here's the thread running under all 5 if you caught it. None of these are dramatic. No one falls into darkness all at once. It's a crack, then another, then a habit nobody questions anymore. And the terrifying part isn't the enemy's power, it's how ordinary the doorway usually looks. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to walk away from God. It happens one skipped prayer, one unaddressed grudge, one normalized show at a time. The same way a house doesn't collapse from one crack, it collapses from the one nobody went back to fix. So don't ask, am I possessed? That's the wrong question, and it's usually a distraction from the real one. Ask this instead. Which of these 5 have I quietly made peace with? The unconfessed pattern, the isolation, the grudge, the empty prayer life, the darkness I let entertain me. James 4:7 already gave you the order that actually works. Submit first, resist second. Not the other way around, and not just once. Lord, show me the crack I've stopped noticing. Give me the honesty to name it, the courage to turn from it, and the strength to walk in the obedience you have already commanded. If one of these 5 landed on you, say so. Comment which number, even just a word crack. You're not the only one who needed to hear this today. Subscribe to guard your spirit. Next time, we're naming what happens after you finally close that door, and why the enemy doesn't leave quietly.